Oh, welcome back to Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. I'm your host, Chad Everett Broshears, and today we're going to go over something a little more fruitful, in my opinion. It looks like I may have some internet connection challenges here on my YouTube channel, so it's a possibility it may have a frame rate freeze. Don't see an option to be able to actually stop that at the time being. So we'll just kind of go with it, and it will likely just be an audio version for a bit. So anyway, all right, what I'm going to talk about today is going to be honesty. And actually it's the opposite side of honesty, which is lying. And we all experience it, especially like in our profession. We experience it in our personal lives. We experience it in a lot of different ways. And what I'm going to discuss today is going to be a different perspective on being dishonest or lying. Commonly we think, well, somebody's going to lie to you, then we probably can't just spend a lot of time around them or guard your resources around them. And that's an immediate or an acute experience on lying. You have also the enrollment factor. So you may tell people around you the person's not willfully honest and intentionally will mislead people. And you'll say that however you say it. It may not be as articulate. It may be more articulate. You'll say it however you say it. What I find that's actually interesting is transgenerational values. And for those that aren't familiar with that term, it's more of how it breaches generations, your great-grandfather to you, or great-grandmother, great-grand-descendants, if you will, to you. That's transgenerational. Now, you learn a lot about the way the world works. There's going to be a good degree of your mechanics that work in the background based off of your ancestry, the way that they thought, what they decided about life, how they actually will pass on different degrees of knowledge, prejudices, things like that, stereotypes of all sorts. And they do that as in the way that they interact with you, or they interacted with your parents and their parents over time. We typically don't think in that type of pattern of thinking. A lot of times we seem to spend more time thinking in a pattern of the immediate or lifetime type things. So what I'm going to go over today is going to be transgenerational effects on being dishonest. Now, we do have things like religious positions of all different types of religions they want people to be honest, because honesty creates a structure of predictability. And where people are deceptive, it's harder to predict what they're going to do, or when they lie, it's harder to predict what they're going to do. Religious structures offer that, but in the sense of your parents, and as they've taught you to be honest, as a child you look at them and think, well, I better be honest for honesty's sake. You don't really think much beyond your parents as, in your adolescent phases. You think about your immediate peers, things like that, but you're honest for their sake, as they've told you to be. And that also creates an easier experience for them, because they can predict your behaviors more accurately than as if you lie. As we create over time, and the influence of religion into this would create, now it's no longer your parents or the authority. You kind of can't escape the authority if it's a God figure. So you're going to have to be honest in the darkness. You're going to have to be honest when no one else is looking. And it creates this policing element to you. So as we continue on through the process, we're moving away from the age of religion. Not that it's a good thing or a bad thing. I personally like the structure that gets brought on by a lot of religious structures that give people like behavioral values that you can predict and expect, types of outcome. Especially whenever it comes to being honest, because that's the way that we all prefer, or at least the overview that we kind of live into, this narration that we believe people should be honest. What we don't think about is the rewards and the incentive values that come from being dishonest. We see that it became more of a employment state towards the late 70s into the 80s, where it's all about making the big money and not necessarily holding ethics. And the people that didn't have the ethics or the honesty factors seemed to do better in corporate America. They made more money, they sold more deals, whatever it was. And they started to become idolized because companies based off of production models want whoever's going to turn over the biggest amounts of production and creating the least amount of damage. But if the number of production is higher, typically the damage element drops off. And we start this reward sequence of incentivizing people that will mislead just enough to get the numbers, but not necessarily enough to harm the company's reputation. We do this in our relationships, by the way, and people do this in their relationships. It's why when they go on dates, somebody may lie to them or mislead them so that they get what they're looking for, whether that's, whatever resource value or option in the relationship that they have, they will find that as a way of achieving that particular opportunity. So they mislead intentionally. But you see, the thing that we create, a lot of modern music is more about being more aggressive for your self-preservation, getting whatever it is that you need, and not so much about the impact you leave on other people. And other people need to understand your dominance because you have that aggression built into the music scene overall. Not necessarily every single genre, but predominantly in specific genres that become very popular. That's a part of what they're doing. Now, there was the whole subliminal messaging that we became very fearful of, the satanic panic back in the 80s, that did turn out that it didn't have anywhere near the claim value that was put forth throughout the 80s, that, play the record backwards, it would give you this, idea that you should be, that you should do some satanic things or cause horrible pain and sorrow in somebody else's life for your self-satisfaction. But now we move to more modern day, and it does have degrees of influence on you, but it's not as significant as it was made out to be back in the 80s and into the early part of the 90s. It's more of, get whatever it is that you need, and it's a narcissistic programming style that goes in because a lot of it is all about centered around you. But you listen to the music that's centered around the person you're listening to, but you reflect yourself into that individual as you listen to it. That's not uncommon at all. But what also comes with that is get it by any means. And whatever blanks are left with the context or the attitude will give you the, I need to experience that myself. So we start creating more of a reward sequence based inside of misleading people. So it's done inside of corporate America. I do work in and have worked in and consulted a lot of companies that work with sales. And I'm more for the virtuous. I'm more towards the culture driven, which is the virtuous side of sales, is culture at the center, not the numbers at the center. Numbers follow culture. And sustainability follows culture. So what I'm talking about, and I'm giving an overview before we jump right into the aspect of transgenerational values. I did mention it by talking about the 80s and the 90s as we became more obsessed with the bottom line and not so much about the quality of what we were doing, quality of personality, quality of product, those kind of things. Now we're getting into where we're starting to forget the benefit of being honest. It's like we just use it as a weapon we weaponize it against people if they're dishonest, as if it's a thing that's going to damage their character. But this is over the course of 30 years. It used to really have a major impact. Now it seems to be something that's almost forgotten in the speed of a news cycle, a 3-day cycle. We seem to forget the negative impacts the emotions had with it. And we become either more forgiving because of opportunities that may come out of it, or we become more forgiving for just the fact we forget or our attention fell on something else. What do you think the future would look like if we continue this process without any kind of writing element? I mentioned religion early on in the video because religion brings structures and the intention for more honesty, and that's the majority of the more commonly and largely practiced religions, regardless of which one it is. There are some clauses built in. I won't get into the nitty-gritty on some of them, but overall they do like to have more of a be honest, or you're going to get caught by the big guy upstairs, or it'll affect you in some way that's not a desirable effect if you are dishonest. We're moving away from the age of religion and getting into the age of intelligence or knowledge, the known world. And as the people that have followed this may understand, I am, as people know me, I'm atheist, but I absolutely respect religion to a great degree. So I'm not saying that you need to be religious, and I'm not saying you need to be atheist. You do your life the way you want to do it. I personally find a great degree of value in being religious. and or practicing religion with sincerity, and truly following the doctrine to a great degree. There are some things that I don't necessarily agree with. I won't get into that in this video, but that is an overarching. Part of the element of that is you should be honest, and it's easier to out somebody and create a corrective mechanism to work against somebody who's dishonest in a way that might get them to start seeing the value of honesty. But since we're moving away from that structure, we're starting to lose some of those borders, some of those opportunities and structures that help us be honest. Now, a lot of times we look at somebody who's dishonest and say that person is not trustworthy. And what happens with not trustworthy is you look at them as being a potential enemy, somebody you can't trust your resources with. But from interviewing and doing this with people that are, they admit to being liars or to misleading people whenever the opportunity is more appropriate to do so, I find that they've also found that they don't like people that are ethically honest always. They also look at them with the same level of disdain that they themselves, feel, or other people feel about them being liars. But if we continue to reward that sequence of being misleading, it's more likely that honesty continues to become more and more rare. And the more and more rare that honesty is, the more chaotic life can be, because you have less predictability elements to life from what we currently know. And if you can imagine a world where we treat people that are honest as we did back in more of our golden years, when we would treat people that are dishonest with the corrective mechanisms to get them to understand the benefit of honesty. Imagine a world that actually has that means towards people that are honest, that the overwhelming majority practice misleading consistently. What kind of world would we be creating? What kind of elements of child rearing would we actually be putting our kids into and ourselves into that exceed our ability to truly manage or develop them? Because they know how to create environments around you that are misleading. Yesterday, or the previous video to this one, I did mention that I would start talking about gaslighting a little bit. This does fall directly in line with gaslighting. Gaslighting is known as being in the tool set for the narcissist, but it also falls into the tool set for narcissistic traits go into sociopaths and psychopaths as well. Gaslighting is where you will, if you're the one gaslighting somebody, you'll be lying to somebody in such a way that you're trying to convince them that their own judgment is faulty and that you're more accurate, more supportive of truth or accuracy than their own ability to perceive the situation. Question their memory, question who they were in the moment, and it starts to really fracture them at a core level that gives the person that's doing the gaslighting more control over them in their life. We can say governments do this, individuals do it, groups do it. There's all kinds of things that do this. That's a tool for breaking people down and create more of either a blind follower of that particular element or area of information, or creates other challenges, other things, like a government position, if you will, getting people to believe that what's going on and question their own sanity. So that's more of the gaslighting element, but it is inside of this, is because it does require that there is misleading people. We like to say that we don't like narcissists in our life, but it does seem like a lot of us are conditioning ourselves to become narcissistic. You can be on the narcissistic scale or the narcissist scale, but it's a scale base, and you may be certain traits, or you have certain traits of narcissism, but it does not mean that you're a narcissist. It's not a clinical definition or a diagnosis just because you exhibit some traits. You have to score high enough on that scale in order to be clinically classified. But we do have people that are practicing it. Grandiose senses of self, and in the effort to try to convince people that you are much better than you actually are. There's a lot of those variables that come into this. But if you could imagine that we could create a world that does honor or rewards misleading people more often than the rewards that go to people that are honest. But it does take quite a bit. You have to be vigilant of yourself and also the people that are involved with you. I'm not going to go on for too long about this particular subject, but if I do see it in the comment section that people are interested in or have questions about it, by all means, I'm going to be happy to answer those questions. And in the meantime, though, put the comments in the comment section. You can message me privately on some of my social media platforms you might see this on, or just get in touch with me one way or another if you have any questions about this or any other subject that you see. I always greatly appreciate your time, the comments in the comment section, the communication, your takeaways, whatever it is that actually lands for you. The intention of today's video is also to try to safeguard the future generations that we're going to be leaving behind us, and to try to create a world that would be more of what you would like to see it. Now, you don't have complete control over that, but you do have some say-so. Just like casting a vote in an election, your actions cast a vote for the future experiences of your children and other people's children. So with that, again, it's Chad Everett Brochures. I'm the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. Please go to the YouTube channel, click on the like icon, obviously, and other elements about that too. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. You'll know when I'm going live. You'll be able to interact with me in that area as well. Also, subscribing to the channel does give me quite a bit of support. So with that, again, thank you so much for your time. Share this video with a person in your life you know will benefit from it. And if I rambled on and